forum, welcome. I'd like to introduce Roseanne Mezga, who is the premier forum, wine forum. So she is the hero, the heroine to all of us wine developers, because she keeps them away from us, users away from us. While we're calling out heroes, I think it's important to celebrate Gibbs' work. Our friend Bela, who has done an enormous amount of work on Bugzilla over the last year. So I think we should thank them all for their help. So thank you guys. And I think you have some slides, but if I recall right, it's kind of QA, like you're happy to be interrupted, and it's the more person that can be shaped. So Karen is going to come and give her moral support as well. So
I'm not a performer, really.
But you need to speak as loud as you can, please.
Okay, so my title is Wine User Experience, and I want to talk about first a little bit who our users are. Last year when I generally talked about users, I got the sense that people were interested in, who our users are, what proportion use this distro, what proportion have these problems. And I could, because I read the forum, I could of course give my impressions, but this is just what I remember, and memory is imperfect. So this year I got ambitious and decided I was going to try and take a more scientific look at it. So I actually scraped the forum for last year, and I didn't have time to tag the whole year. I just got this bright idea in early January. So, but there were 816 threads created on the forum between July 1st and December 31st of last year. And I systematically went and tagged them for things that I was interested in trying to figure out statistically, as well as anything that started to look interesting as I was rereading that stuff. So it's kind of experimental. It's maybe not the most scientific approach, but it's my first stab at trying to quantify some information, because of course on the forum there's a great deal of information about what our users are experiencing, but it's in a very messy kind of format. So the first thing to keep in mind, the first thing I looked at is why are they posting? And it's important as I go through the other statistics to keep in mind that this group I'm looking at are people with problems, overwhelmingly. We don't hear from people for whom wine is working perfectly. I mean, once in a while, someone, once a year, someone will post on the forum, you're doing a great job, it's wonderful, we love you. But, 3/4 of our posters on the forum have a specific problem they want to solve. About a quarter have a question as opposed to a specific problem, and it's usually, most of those are how-to questions. How do I do this in wine? Some of them are also, the next biggest group of questions are, does this app work in wine before I buy it? A consideration. And then there's a small group of random other reasons for posting. Often suggestions, wine should do this. Which, being users, admittedly, often the suggestions are simply naive. Why don't we raise money to pay developers to do this? Which I'm sure the developers will love, but of course users don't have a clue how expensive it is. So, we'll give you $50 to write this patch. They're well-meaning. I also looked at, what operating system they're using, and now there's 98, we don't require people to identify that, but because we now have specific Linux and Mac subforums, even if they don't tell us what they're using, we know by where they posted. So of our forum users, again, 3/4 are on Linux. Mac users are about 12.5% unknown, and we had 2 lonely FreeBSD users. And that's about typical. We get a couple FreeBSD users a year. I will say, I believe the Mac users proportionally are underrepresented, and the reason is most Mac users are in fact using third-party apps to run wine, and that's not supported on our forum, and in fact, we have a sticky at the top of the forum saying we don't support these things, and essentially are telling them don't post it. So I suspect there are probably more Mac users out there, certainly than proportionally, but they're not going to come to our forum for help. I also looked at other people who use Linux, what distro, to the extent that, again, they identified it. Many didn't, but proportionally, Ubuntu and derivatives, other than Linux Mint, are the biggest group. I simply counted Linux Mint separately because they're big enough to be counted separately. They're our second biggest group, followed by Debian, and then that little wedge of other, and a breakdown of how it worked out. The other is is their distros, but they were fewer than 10 people, 10 posts, so I just lumped them together. So this kind of, obviously Ubuntu dominates here. Now keep in mind, this is a group we're talking about, a group that has problems, as opposed to a group that is representative of all our users. So one can speculate, why Ubuntu users seem to have more problems. I think one of the factors is that Ubuntu is marketed to newbies. They have a higher proportion of newbies in general. And the other groups that have fewer people, these tend to be more experienced Linux users who are better able to solve their own problems. So even if they have problems, they're not necessarily coming to us for help. Whereas Ubuntu users, what we see on the forum, are, I think last year I said, our typical user is just finished installing Ubuntu and now wants to play World of Warcraft. And they're not even quite sure how to use their package manager. So I think that's a big reason why we see so many Ubuntu users. And again, I don't think they're necessarily that dominant in terms of all users. It's just they're that dominant in terms of who we're hearing from who has problems. I also took a look at what version of Wine they're using. And now not everybody identifies it. Actually, only about 54% actually identify the version of Wine. And in the group, starting at the top, 1.7, which came out in August, 1.6 came out in July. Previous development release 1.5, previous stable release 1.4, and pre-1.4, 10 people, I lumped them all together. There are always random people who are using ancient versions of Wine. The general reasons for that are either they're on a very old distro and there are literally no new packages for it, or they have an app that needs an old version of Wine. Often they have an old patch that never made it into Wine. Their app depends on it, so they literally have to use this ancient version of Wine to run this specific. Now, looking at this, it looks like, kind of like the current development release is about equal in usage to the current stable release, kind of 50-50. That's misleading. You'll see on the next chart. But keep in mind that the time period I looked at includes the 2 weeks when 1.6 first came out, and it was literally the newest release. So people who normally use the development branch and update every 2 weeks were, of course, using 1.6 at that point. And so that's artificially high. Now, having read the forum, I knew there was a particular problem with the 1.6 branch. And the next chart shows usage by month, and I specifically did this. 1.5 is at the bottom, and that goes down. That blue line, 1.6, usage was at its high point when it was released, which is not surprising because, again, as I said, people who normally use the development branch were also using that. So that initial drop is expected when 1.7 comes out because that group jumped to this. What's unexpected is the nosedive 1.6 takes between August and September. And by the end of the year, it's actually below usage of the previous stable release. And this is something for those of us who do user support, not just on the forum, but also in Mozilla in terms of triaging those. It's been driving us crazy because,
Maybe because in Ubuntu it's still 1.4 by default?
yes, that's what I was getting to. That is exactly what happened. Ubuntu shipped 13.10 with 1.4.1. We're talking about, of course, newbies who don't necessarily know there even is something other than what their distro's repository has, so they install 13.10, install 1.41, thinking they have the newest version of Wine. They run into a problem. Hopefully they come on the forum where we're more equipped to deal with these kind of newbie problems, but unfortunately, a lot of them have, in fact, in filing bugs, 1.41, been told to retest. They find it's fixed, of course, fixed a long time ago, and then they go through having to upgrade. So that's been a problem for the past few months, literally. In terms of, but it shows how dependent users, particularly inexperienced ones, are on their packagers and what they're used for. Now, in this case, it's not the user's fault. They don't know any better. This is their package manager told them they had the newest version.
And to be fair, whenever someone goes out to a forum or a bunch or anything like that, what they're told to do is apt-get install this. So when you're going to go get Wine, apt-get install Wine, and then you have Wine 1.4, and now you're stuck. And that's what they're told to do.
So, is this Scott didn't update his package fast enough? I mean, what's the issue here?
I mean, come on, it was 2010, that's October, and when the 106 came out,
Came out July 18th.
I think it was too late to change package. They have a decision which package they use for the release and just import small bug fixes the easy way and change a package to a newer version is not allowed in the short time before release, and after the release you have to take a big way to get a package update in the stable release. That's a
I mean,
critical
yeah.
time.
1.6 came out in July. That's, I
Don't
don't
know
package that's,
which
I
time it
know
is.
OpenSUSE managed to ship
Maybe
a
it was
newer
a time,
version.
for example, when, I don't know, but for example, when Scott has holiday in this summertime, for example, just in this time, when he comes back, it may be the deadline over. Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the reasons. I just know it's causing us problems. And I mean, this is abnormal to have the stable release drop that much. Now, the development branch is, as expected, going up. Part of the reason it's going up is the other big thing that happened last year is the December Steam update basically broke all versions of Wine prior to that. It was fixed in the development branch within 1 day. I mean, you guys are superheroes sometimes. Seriously. I mean, you can't ask for anything better than that. But of course, I spent a lot of time on the forum repeatedly telling people when you update to 1.7.8. It was updated in the development branch right away. That wasn't backported to the stable branch till like 4.6.2, which just came out not too long ago. So again, that's also taking from people who perhaps may have preferred to stay with the stable branch if we use 1.6, but of course, needing to play their games takes precedence over everything. So we have a sharper upturn.
One question, what distributions do you use, like the stable branch, except Ubuntu and Debian? Because I know Fedora is not, you don't have many branches, they take 1.6
this two-branch system was made before I ever became involved in wine, and I know there are differing opinions. As someone who does user support, I'm endlessly telling people to upgrade to the latest development release. I mean, there's a certain kind of a grace period after the new stable branch comes out. I'll give, you know, for maybe a month or so, I'll say, well, upgrade at least to the latest stable branch. But then I start to see that there are bugs even in the latest stable branch that have been fixed in the development branch. So I say, at that point, I start telling people automatically, try the latest development. It's a problem helping users, because those of us who help users, we're experienced users, we're using the development branch. And as it goes further in time, I don't even remember what 1.6 was like. That was, you know,
Time-based.
Well, the thing is, you don't know how many users are happily using the stable release.
yeah, you know.
Oh yeah, that's true.
This is discussion with Robin.
Yeah.
So,
No, yeah, it's that's
We
those
don't, we
numbers
don't.
are skewed, but yeah.
Though I think we can effectively say that with Steam, a whole lot of Steam users were very unhappy, at least until it was backported, but we don't know. Now that it's been backported to the stable branch, they may be perfectly happy. And people have a misconception about the stable branch. As I said this last year, to users, the word stable means it doesn't crash. And of course, that's not true.
What you mean is not true.
In general, people find the stable branch crashes more than the development branch, in particular if they're using 1.4.1. And the reason for that, the reason I'm particularly frustrated that 1.6 was foisted on Ubuntu, or 1.4 was foisted on Ubuntu users, is that the Wine's VC run in 1.4.1 was not yet ready, complete enough to run most apps. That was fixed by about 1.5.9. So we're still, you know, seeing in these 1.4, people are seeing crashes in unimplemented functions that were implemented 18 months ago. And so, you know, my end, that's what has me frustrated with trying to help people, because it was a needless problem. You know, if they'd been given 1.6, they wouldn't be seeing these crashes. So yes.
Maybe stable is the wrong word, maybe like slow. Stay.
Well, actually, if your application works, I mean, don't change the line for it.
Well, yeah,
Because that's same as
for, you know, for those of us, again, who six months or a year ago, this is a duplicate. And so it's creating unnecessary work for the non-developer volunteers, like me.
we should name the release future fix release.
Okay, the next thing I looked at is third-party apps, is one of the controversial things. Many of our users, this is basically people who mentioned having used a third-party app prior to, you know, posting. Winetricks, biggest usage, not surprisingly, because it's the only one that's kind of semi-supported on our forum. I said it's controversial because, you know, officially we only support plain wine. You're only supposed to file bugs, and even on the forum, you're only supposed to be using plain wine. We accept Winetricks simply because those of us who do the help mostly use it occasionally ourselves. And, you know, speaking for myself, sometimes some of the questions about Winetricks are in fact problems with Winetricks, not problems with wine. I'll answer it if I know the answer off the top of my head. Otherwise, it's generally go report it to the guys at winetricks.org. The second most common one uses Play on Linux. Again, controversial. People are told try plain wine and then get back to us. and a smattering of others. Wine bottler, wine skin, and obviously Plan Mac are actually all Mac wrappers, and this is definitely, as I said, underrepresented in terms of people who are actually out there using these wrappers, because specifically we have a sticky at the top of the forum telling them that wine bottler and wine skin are not supported here. So we're just not getting it. And Q for Wine is a newer one, and we are hearing about Type 1. We're occasionally getting people asking for our help, and I refer them to your and I look, by the way, at your support looks very good, Jake. So, and in fact, I've recommended Pipe Light to some of our users who say, well, I can't get Silver Light to work in wine. I'm trying to. They say the best bet is Pipe Light, so go down for that. But yeah, the third-party app is a controversial one, because for those of us who do support, people come in having totally messed up their wine prefix by installing a bunch of native DMLs and making other changes, and in the case of Play on Linux, possibly using a patched version of wine that's not supported. And we're the bad guys who have to deal with it. We say, no, you can't do this. We won't talk to you unless you use plain wine. Okay, problems building wine. I looked at specific kinds of problems to talk, and I went to who has problems building wine. Not surprisingly, Debian's at the top of people who have problems building wine. Most of our users are using packages, but there are people who, for various reasons, try to build it. Usually, the main reasons for wanting to build wine instead of using a distro packages is that the distro packages are out of date, or there even aren't any. Sometimes it is because they want to use a patched version of wine. And sometimes it's actually because they want to run a regression test. So, the reasons for Debian having such problems are multi-arch, of course, and the difficulty of getting 32-bit dependencies. But there's another reason, and that's that our instructions for building wine on Debian, on our wiki, predate the move to multi-arch. So they're totally useless for current Debian.
Just remove them.
Well, they're useful for people using really old versions of Debian. We have seriously had people pleading with me for help, and I don't use Debian. I'm not qualified to give them advice. So if anybody out here there uses Debian and knows how to build wine on Debian, if you could take the time to update our wiki, your fellow Debian users would be very grateful, and I would be very grateful to you as well, because then I would have some accurate, up-to-date information to point our users to.
Why do you suppose that problem with multi-arch is more common on Debian than on Ubuntu, which also uses multi-arch?
Ubuntu doesn't build packages. Ubuntu users don't build packages.
They don't, but we also have somebody did post, and I think it was actually Dan Cagle, posted up-to-date instructions for building wine on Ubuntu. And it's literally, it comes down to, people have said they have searched the entire web and couldn't find up-to-date instructions for building Debian. Now, I actually found a blog that looked like it knew what it was talking about, and I literally have been referring users to this blog entry. Nobody said it didn't work. Of course, the other problem is people don't always give me feedback one way or the other. But at this point, I'm pointing people to an external blog that seems to know what it's talking about, and I hope it does. But I don't like doing that. Really, ideally, these kind of instructions should be on our website.
Copy and paste it from the other website.
If somebody could verify, if somebody knowledgeable about building on Debian could actually verify to me that this actually is the accurate way to do it.
Well, did the users came back to you?
They didn't, I mean,
So
that's part of the problem. The problem is I don't know. The problem with dealing with users is the disappearing user. So, you give them a suggestion and never hear from them again. And maybe that's because it worked and they're happy, and maybe it's because they gave up, and maybe it's because they found a different solution elsewhere, or maybe they died. I don't know. So.
That's a common problem among
But yeah, W is the big one. The second one is actually sent us, and I was actually myself surprised that we had that many, because for some reason it's still sticking in my memory as being
Yeah.
that big a thing. But they actually have a similar problem in getting up-to-date information as well as packages to satisfy dependencies. That's why.
Yeah, the other problem is that Alexander loves to break that. Periodically have to keep
It's all your
fixed
fault.
again.
Well, again, most of the users who come on the forum are not building one. I'm just, I looked at it because obviously if you can't even install Wine, then, you can't even get to further problems. So I also looked at problems installing a package, and yes, we have people who don't know how to use their package manager, but there are also other problems, and Ubuntu users are at the top, and Linux Mint also uses the same packages. So it's overwhelmingly in that group, people having problems installing packages. Part of it is user inexperience, but it's not entirely their fault. The problems were clustered in September and December. In September, as I recall, there actually was a broken Ubuntu package up there briefly that simply wouldn't be installed. And so, yeah, they came out. In December, the problem turned out to be our instructions on our website for adding the PPA. We have this nice little page that looks like, completely idiot-proof. We have nice pictures. And the stern warning, copy and paste this line. Now, how could anybody screw that up? They couldn't, but we did. Because there was an extra space in the HTML, and because of that extra space, if they literally followed that instructions, it would not work. Now, I feel bad because we had a string of confused newbies coming on the forum insisting they followed the instructions to the letter and they don't work, and I'm thinking, you did something wrong. I don't know what it is. I don't use Ubuntu. I don't know the package manager. Go report it to the package container, and kind of brushing them off until someone thankfully finally figured it out and filed the bug and did get fixed. Feel bad for these poor users. I didn't perhaps treat them as well, but this was our fault.
Has it driven down the reports of problems since that's fixed?
We haven't, actually, so we did have a problem. I mean, we always had, again, because a big part of this is user experience, we're always going to get some people who just plain don't know how to use the package. We on the forum, I refer them to the distro because package managers are so different from distro to distro. I can help them with OpenSUSE, that's what I use. But I don't have a clue how Ubuntu's or anybody else's works. So we generally refer them to their distro forum. And we actually, the guidelines for our forum are that basic knowledge of how to use your operating system is assumed. That you're experienced. Now, the reality is that description fits the people answering the questions on the forum. It does not generally fit the people asking the questions. But, know, there's a balance we have to strike because we are not a general how to use Linux forum, and we could easily become one because of the nature of our user base, because they are people who just switch from Windows, they're very inexperienced, and need a lot of help. So at some point we have to draw a line and say, no, I'm not teaching you how to use your package manager, you have to go back to your distro. But this was definitely our fault.
Seems like Ubuntu could sanitize the user. Like,
Yeah.
you know that having a space at the beginning should show up a mysterious error that you can't figure out.
Okay, so I also tried to tag threads for problems running line, and granted, problems are all over the place. But the keyword that came up most often was crash, possibly because something that serious is more likely to get people actually seeking help. Graphics was second. Running an installer that failed was third, and one of the kind of surprising that it was that high was fonts. And then I just put up stuff that had at least 10. You know, input device includes, lumped them all together, keyboard, mouse, tablet, then mono.net, sound, networking, and performance. And this was actually things that I tagged as problems, not questions. The one, in most cases, the numbers are the same. They're basically all problems. Performance is the one area that actually had almost as many questions as problems. And how did I make the distinction? Well, in performance, performance is so bad you can't play this game, as opposed to, it's perfectly playable, but I want every last frame per second I can get. And so we have definitely a group of hardcore gamers who want every last frame per second. As opposed to, this represents the people who say, you know, this is so bad it's unplayable, or almost unplayable. So that's kind of a, general range of the kinds of problems users are reporting.
My experience is that the distinction between this is unplayable and I want the best performance I can get is kind of fluent. So
It is.
I have to
It is, and when I was tagging, I basically accepted how the user perceived it, because this is what I'm looking at. It's user perceptions. If they say it's a problem, if it's a problem for them, it's a problem.
I had this crossover user who played Skyrim at 7 frames per second and was perfectly happy. And then there are those guys who play Counter-Strike at 100 frames per second and say it's terribly slow, I want 300.
Yeah, but to the extent that I'm, from my point of view, looking at, how happy are our users, how are they coping, I take their word that this is okay, or this is not okay. Question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what are those fonts problems?
Oh.
That looks good. I have a lot of people sometimes do that. The application looks bad and they install some fonts and then
It looks either they're not rendering properly, or in some cases not showing up at all. They're getting a little.
yeah, the miss fonts basically. The application forces a font and if it's not there, it's not falling back. So you have to have the proper font installed. And LineTricks does the job, get the fonts and it works.
In some cases, actually, font problems turn out to be actually language variable problems. People literally, I'm trying to run. The Japanese fonts are
If you try and run
showing
like
up.
a Japanese program, but your system is set to English, it just doesn't work.
Same for Russian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to make
Yeah.
sure that the locale of the machine matches the locale of the
you
program.
do,
you want to
and,
run.
and you can start, line with the correct language variable. And in many
Right.
cases, now in some cases, people have done that already, and the fonts still aren't showing up, and that's an actual bug. But that starting with the lang variable is one thing that's actually not documented on our site. We have actually periodically get questions about it, but it's not actually in the user guide or the FAQ. So that's so. Moving on, that was my statistics. I'll talk a little bit about user support, or as I put it, dealing with people who don't follow directions. And that's an oversimplification, of course, because I'm a user myself. Really, to the extent that I can help people, it's because I read the directions and I follow directions. But we have a lot of information on our site. And it's clear that people aren't reading it in many cases, because a lot of what I do is in fact simply for people. The answer to your question is here in the FAQ. Yeah, FDB. Now, my background, I'm not a technical person, my background is as a teacher. And I tend to treat my users kind of like I treat students. Which means, yeah, I do expect them to do their homework. I expect them to be willing to learn. If they're not, that's their choice, but then it's, have a nice day. But I also know as a teacher that dealing with a student, I can't just say read the textbook. That's all you need to do. And I also know that if a lot of students are making the same mistake, they're just not getting it. As a teacher, I have to take a look at what I'm telling them. Because clearly I'm not communicating effectively. So, in talking about, people not following directions and reading stuff, I wanted to take a look at why aren't they? And are there things that we could be doing better to make it easier for them? The example of, that problem with the Ubuntu page is a clear example where it was our fault when they were trying and it wasn't working. Now, it's obviously not that we don't have enough information. We have a wiki with 848 pages. We have Bugzilla, which as of yesterday was up to 35,485 total bug reports, 7,700 still open, but in terms of looking for troubleshooting, you often want to read the closed bug reports as well. The information might be there. It might be something, one of the problems is people filing bugs for things that were already fixed because they're using that old version, and we get duplicate bugs. The AppDB, where we keep user reports on performance of various apps, has over 12,000 entries. And the forum has 16,782 threads. So it's not lack of information. Why aren't they reading all the 65,000 pages? It's there, just go read it. Well, part of the problem, obviously, the sheer volume of it, but the website is divided actually into 4 distinct areas, the Wiki, Bugzilla, FTP, and Forum, which are essentially separate entities. Maybe all winehq.org, but they each have a separate login. They have a separate search. And so the first thing a person coming into the website has to figure out is, which one am I going to search? Should I be looking in the Wiki, Bugzilla? Now, if they come to the forum, and I'll keep pitching the forum, they get my help, and I'm pretty familiar with the website. I sometimes think my main role is a cross between a traffic cop and a reference librarian. So I just say, go there, and you go over there. And, this is the information you need. As familiar as I am with the website, there are times when I can't find things I know are there, because I've seen them before. So don't underestimate the difficulty faced by users on our website. Now let's say they decided to search more than one. They will sometimes find multiple pages on the same thing that don't agree with each other. So I was putting together this presentation, and this kind of surprised me. We actually have 4 different sets of instructions on how to file a bug. They don't say the same thing. In some cases, they directly contradict each other. And so what a user is going to do if they're coming in to file a bug and they, never filed a bug before, they're not a technical person, it's in part going to depend on which set of instructions they happen to read. And if they happen to read more than one, there's a very real danger they're just going to discount all of them and do what they think best. Or they're going to pick and choose pieces. I mean, they're going to cope as best they can. But this is why I think in part, and I wanted to focus in part on bugs because users, obviously inexperienced users file them. It causes problems because they file bug reports that no one could possibly even attempt to fix because it doesn't have the information needed to even think about it. Or it's a duplicate, invalid, they're using an old version of Wine, they didn't read the instructions, or they read the wrong set of instructions.
So are we not, like, this is a sort of a job that you can recruit people as volunteers to work on, right? It doesn't require skilled wine, like fixing this could be done by, there are many people in the world who could fix this, right? Whereas wine hacking is harder. Have we just not attracted those volunteers? Are we doing something wrong? Is it just...
Well, we had the person who did a lot of migrating stuff to the wiki and cleaned up the wiki, but it's a lot of work. So.
Did we not buy them enough beer? I mean, what?
You didn't invite him, so.
Why not? I mean, are we...
Well, okay, this one is the wiki one, and that's probably the best one and the most up-to-date. And in terms of users actually filing bugs, that's the user guide. This is the one on the above, is on the WineHQ, the main page. So if users were going to Bugzilla, that's what they would see. Now, that's a lot shorter than this, and I think part of the issue is people are not actually reading this. I think people who triage bugs would like them to read this, and they're not. And that's actually one of the things I wanted to address is why I think they're not. So what I wanted to do is, here we have it. So here is the main page of Bugzilla. File a bug, this is the first thing I see that says, before you report a bug, please make sure you've completed the following steps. So this looks like the instructions. So let's pretend I'm a new user. I'm not technical, but I'm a reasonably intelligent person who reads what's in front of me and tries to follow the instructions. But I'm not experienced. But I have a bug review report. And I'm reporting it because Wine told me to report it. Something crashed, and I got this nice pop-up saying, a bug, and a nice little window to capture that trace. And I wanted to walk through these steps from the point of view of someone who's never filed a bug before. So the first step, create a login account. Well, that's easy. I can do that. I've created logins on websites, so I go ahead and do that. It's fine. Step 2, use the available bug list. It says this list shows the submitted bugs that have not been assigned to anyone yet. If you want to work on a bug, this is the place to start looking. So I just installed Ubuntu 10 minutes ago. That doesn't seem relevant. Now there's a link there, and so I can click a link. And okay, there it is. There's the available bug list.
Well, it's limited to 500, so that's
It's
okay.
limited to 500. Well, I could see all of them if I wanted to see all 7,700. But let's not. That takes a while. But so as a user, I've maybe, why is this even in there?
Right.
for reporting a bug. The problem is, as a user, what that step teaches the user is that some of these instructions are not necessary or relevant to filing bugs. And I'm going to remember that because I'm an intelligent person who learns from what I'm doing. So we've gone through that. Now, step 3. Make sure you are using the latest stable version or a build from Git, comma, if similar bugs have recently been fixed and committed. Now, okay, so I'm an English teacher, so I'm telling you that comma does not belong there.
Rosanna, forgive me, we're getting really short on time. I kind of wanted to give you a warning, and I know you're... And I don't want to stop you because what I want you to do is get this fixed, but we are getting low on time, so I kind of want to see if we can accelerate this. Or,
Okay.
We don't believe we have to be rigid on our schedule, but I do need to...
All right, so just looking at the grammar aside, and it's an atrocious sentence. If similar bugs have been fixed and committed, how on earth am I supposed to know that? If I click on Git, it leads me to another page that tells me how to maintain my patches using Git. So I know that doesn't apply. So that leaves me with the latest stable version. That I can understand as a user, and I'll go, and my package manager will tell me that 1.4.1 is indeed the latest stable version. And so I'll go on to read our tips on bug hunting and support. Now, I'm here to report a bug, and I've already gone through a couple of things that I know aren't related to reporting bugs, so I say, well, this has nothing to do with me. I'll just skip that, because I'm getting tired, and I'm in a hurry, and I want to file this bug. This link is what leads to that page that has the actual accurate information that people should be following. They're going to skip it, because it doesn't look like it has anything to do with reporting a bug, and you've already trained them that some of this stuff doesn't. Then read the FAQ, might do that. Submit only unknown bugs. You actually have 2 conflicting links that lead to different places. So which one? This one will actually lead you to finally submitting the bug. So we have a series of instructions, half of which have nothing to do with actually reporting a bug. And it's set up in a way to train people to, in fact, ignore part of our instructions. And that's why they're doing it. So it's easy, to say, well, users are, inexperienced, they're stupid, they're not following directions, but in fact, we're training them. They are, in fact, intelligent people who are doing what we're teaching them to do. That's my point. So
who is going to fix this page, right? Do we have any of the Bugzilla elements doing it? You're going to fix it? All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to get to? We are kind of getting
no, that's
time.
it.
That's it?
This would be
All right.